pretty cool. So the first question I've got for you is, can you, from your experience, can you just give me a quick definition of social selling?
Sure. So for me, I think social selling is I'm from a school of Gary Vaynerchuk. So I believe in the jab, 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 right hook idea where, you build relationships and you not only foster those relationships, but you establish yourself as a thought leader, you convey your messages. And I think part of that, really what social selling, I think that makes social selling very unique is that social selling, in my opinion, is that art of what my dad raised me to be my brothers and I to learn golf, because he always told us, golf, business is done on the golf course, son. And for me, that is something that has always resonated to me. So social media, I believe, is the social selling golf course. And it's where you do business, but it's really where you build relationships. It's where your true authentic self comes out. And oftentimes when you get to the 18th hole, or maybe you're at the 19th hole and having a pint, that's when the sell actually happens, right? So I think of social selling and really social media is that element of what the golf course is. And oftentimes the sell comes on at an offline event or via email or via a private message, but you're not able to get to that point, or you're able to get to that point at a faster pace, like you would in the golf course through social media. Okay.
For those people that are just starting out with this, and there's a lot of people that even at organization level that they've not really embraced social. We all know that. But for those people that are just starting out, can you tell me 3 things that they should not do? I mean, we've got loads of things out there telling them, how to do it. The infographics are amazing these days. But 3 things that they should stay away from, in your opinion.
So for me, I think it's staying away from trying to be like everybody else. I think we have this need and this, I believe in learning always. But I think when we learn and we see someone doing something successful, we almost automatically want to copy it. And the reason people buy from you, the reason people can, you can stand out from the noise is you have to be yourself. So I think it's important to learn and listen to others, but I think don't copy word for word or copy the exact strategy as everyone else, because you'll quickly kind of get lost in the feed and it'll be hard to stand out. Another thing for me is, I think part of it is we look for the quick win. So something I recommend people doing is don't think there is a quick win. Don't get on and think immediately you have something that everyone else will. A month in, I have a lot of people that get discouraged early on, and so I think focus less on that quick win, focus more on the long term and investing in it. And I think that can be of huge value down the road and across the board. And then I'd say a third one is something not to do is don't forget that this is a social, don't forget the social element of social media. I think we talk about sales, and I love the idea that marketers always ruin everything, but the social aspect of it is be yourself, but also be fun. Remember that there is a social piece of social media, not just sharing links, not just writing blog posts. Conveying your message. I can tell you a lot of my most successful social sales or things that led from social to a sale for me happened things that you would never expect. Pictures of my daughters on Instagram. Someone messaged me and says, Brian, I've been following you. I respect you, but just seeing you with your daughters, I need to work with you. And that's not, I didn't post that thinking this is a social selling thing, but I posted myself and building that relationship and that true, authentic one person. And, an Instagram picture with my daughters has closed business for me. And you can't say that that's truly social selling, but it's being social on social media.
Okay. What would you tell me is I think I could probably decipher it from those 3 things that you just said not to do, but what would you say is your golden rule?
Be consistent. Consistency really does matter because it is super hard to stand out. And if you want to be found, you have to make it easy on people. I have a sticky note up on my desk right now that says, keep it simple, stupid. And I try my hardest to do that. And it's I recommend people when they're doing it to use your first name, last name, or some version of your first name, last name. I kind of violate that rule because I really didn't see the value of it until I was already building a brand around my Twitter handle, which is iSocialFans. But for me, like, my website is iSocialFans. Every single new account, every single new social media, Meerkat, Periscope, Blab, it's all iSocialFans. And I think consistency really does matter today. And that includes when you post content. If you are going to be consistent and say, hey, I can't engage but on Sundays, be consistent every Sunday on providing value and engaging on Sundays. I don't think you have to be everywhere all the time, but if you're consistent, people will remember you and they will make it a point to show up. I have CEOs and CIOs that tell me the only time they ever get on social media is every Thursday at noon because it's a show that I host called Cloud Talk. And the reason that is because they know every Thursday at noon Eastern time, they're going to find me on there having a Twitter chat. And I've been doing it for a year, every single Thursday. I've never missed a single Thursday. And that consistency really matters to these CIOs and decision makers, that if they're going to put something in their calendar, they want to know when they show up on Thursdays, they're going to get value. And that consistency cannot be underestimated. Probably not something you hear often as the answer to that question. But for me, it's what's been successful for me and the customers that I've worked with.
Okay, that's brilliant. So one of the things that I've run businesses, small businesses here in the UK, and I like most MDs, have come up against the issue of social media within the business. Not the problem with the business having its social media account, but the problem of my employees having social media and talking about the company message. Now, a few years ago, it was the Wild West out there. It was really difficult. There was nobody out there really giving guidance. So it was before social selling was talked about. So it was difficult to research and get answers about it. Today, it's a bit easier. It's much more acceptable. What would you say? What would you advise organizations to do in dealing with social sellers? Is it complete freedom? You know what? That's it. You can have your own Twitter. You can have your own Facebook, LinkedIn, and just post about us. Or is it, these are the rules. This is what you can say. This is what you can't say. Which extreme is it for you?
Love the question. So I have something that's called my 3 T's rule, and it's pretty easy, and it's in this order. The order is more important than the 3 T's. It's trust, training, and tools. Trust, training, tools. And it's in that order, and it's super important. You cannot empower people to share your message. You can't empower your employees to tell your story if you don't trust them. And that trust goes both ways. The employee has to trust the brand that they're going to be rewarded, or part of it comes kind of both ways. Training is too often looked at as a one-time event. You train your employees one time when they're a new hire, and then you forget that they need to train on the new technology, the new things as they go. And then last is the tools. And I would say, to kind of answer your question there, I believe swim lanes are important. If you give someone a whiteboard with no boundaries, they're going to stare at that and they're going to be overwhelmed. And that to me is something that scares a lot of employees. It scares a lot of people. For me, I think swim lanes are important. So giving people an idea of what they can and can't say. We don't want people sharing intellectual property. Things that, I think those swim lanes really allow guidance, but they also kind of allow people to kind of get that confidence going. And I think training people on what is right and what is not right is really important, because you don't train somebody, this is how you tweet. Like that part's easy. You can send them a YouTube video. But what you do train them on is why, how to tweet. Why should you share our message? Why is it important? I had a CEO early on tell me every employee sells. It doesn't matter if it's in the manufacturing. We are manufacturing modular data centers, or if you're in marketing. Because if you're on an airplane sitting next to someone, they ask you what you're doing. You do, the answer to that question is selling them on your business. And so for me, it's that trust, training, and tools. But I also believe it comes with, you need swim lanes. It's very important to understand what is right, what is not right. But yeah, it's in that order, because a lot of times people throw a tool at a culture problem or throw a tool at a people problem, and the tool breaks and says, oh, social media is not for me. Well, it's probably because you didn't start with trust. You didn't train them on the how and the why, and then implement the tool. And I think that's the most important.
That's great. I love your answer to that, Brian. In fact, I'm going to skip the next couple of questions, come back to those. I'm going to go straight to this question. Linda Bernardi, I don't know if you know her, IBM Chief Innovation Officer, Cloud and Internet of Things, recently posted on LinkedIn about the swarm of people that were basically making her LinkedIn almost useless because they were bombarding her with sales messages. And what she wrote was, did you see the post?
Someone else actually brought it up to me, but I didn't actually read the entire post.
Okay. I mean, she was upset. I mean, and she even used that. I'm not going to say exactly what she said on here because we may have some viewers under 18, but she was upset. And one of the things that came through to me is that she used that tone on LinkedIn. I mean, she spoke about boundaries right at the end of her post on LinkedIn. What do you think of this? I mean, what do you think the boundaries are for people that are trying to sell into people like Linda and seeing that LinkedIn is their only bridge, and people like Linda who, they're being inundated with this stuff, and it's almost making LinkedIn completely useless to them?
Well, I always like the caveat, you can't fix stupid. Right. And let's be honest. And part of this conversation is that some people just won't get it. Some people are going to misuse tools. They're going to come to a networking event and all they're going to do is hawk their business card to every single person. Those kind of things I think happen all the time. I think that's something but I also believe it comes back to that trust and that training aspect where I don't think people, a lot of people get on social media to do social selling and they do it to check a checkbox. They don't listen, they don't learn. And for me, there's so much business intelligence. There's so many other things that are on there. But oftentimes it's those one or two people, or maybe in some cases, hundreds of people that are ruining platforms. And I think LinkedIn's one of them. I joke all the time that LinkedIn InMail is not something I read, because, I think my unread box in there is like 178 just in the last month of people that, either connect or they've used they've kind of exploited the system where if you're in a similar group than me, you can send me an in-mail without having to pay for it and those kind of things. So for me, I think it comes down to educating, but I have a good friend, Rachel Miller, who I co-host my weekly show with, and she always goes out of her way to educate people. So if they send her an automatic DM that's not personalized, for me, I just ignore it or maybe sometimes unfollow them. For her, she replies back and says, that wasn't a really personalized way of doing that to engage me. And I suggest you turn that auto DM off. And if you feel like you want to use direct messages, I suggest you do A, B, and C. And she does a great job of really teaching people because we often complain about, everybody on LinkedIn is spamming me. But do we take it upon ourselves to educate people? Do we take it upon ourselves to help people do it right? And I think if we just complain about it, we just say this platform's ruining, I don't think that overall helps us drive this change. So for me, I think it's difficult, I can tell you. But I also think it comes down to another piece, and it's, have a strategy for every platform and everything you do. Because I believe every digital act you make is part of your story. Because your first impression is really made online. We all know that. Someone's going to Google you. Someone's going to look on LinkedIn. Someone's going to see if you have a Twitter account. Someone's going to see your most recent blog. And so for me, that consistency that I talked about earlier, it really does matter. But having a strategy for every platform. Every time I post something on LinkedIn, there's a reason why I posted it. There's a reason why I used the language that I did. There's a reason why I tagged people in it. And I think that is something you have to kind of embrace. If you just blast everything everywhere with no strategy, you're not going to find much value, and you're probably going to get overwhelmed and burnt out on each platform.
Okay. One of the things that I put down to ask you a bit earlier on was, and I guess in 2 words or in maybe 4 words, what are the 2 people that you most admire for social selling at the moment?
Ooh, that's a good one. So Coca Sexton at LinkedIn, and that's actually a great one because at LinkedIn, I think of early on for LinkedIn for me was not a very personalized network and didn't really have a face on it. And I think brands really do have to have a face on it. And Coca Sexton has done an amazing job of not asking for the fame, not going out of his way to be on the front, of every list. But the guy does it well, and he helps other people. I've used the LinkedIn social selling, I think it's platinum edition, where you have to upgrade and sell. And I went to Coca and said, I need help. I need to use LinkedIn better. And he didn't sell me on his platform. He didn't, he actually did social selling right. So Coca Sexton is one that jumps out to me. And then the second one is someone that's a little outlandish, and he's kind of crazy, but I love him for it, is Jim Keenan. And he has a Sales Guy blog, is his blog, and he's kind of
Is that K-E-E-N-A-N?
I'm sorry?
Is that K-E-E-N-A-N?
K-E-E-N-A-N. Yeah, K-E-E-N-A-N, Jim Keenan. He has his sales blog is very in your face. He cusses, he tells you how it is. But what I love about it is he's doing it, he's living it. And he does a great job of really keeping it real. Not, he one of his lines he used recently, he was like, it's not just, everybody uses that line, people buy from people they like. But really, people buy from people they have no like or dislike from as well. It's just they don't buy from people they hate, right? And he called that out. He said, "Stop saying," and that's the truth. We all use that line. People buy from people they like, but people also buy from people that they have a lukewarm feeling with, right? And it's not always that. And that's one of his blog posts. And Jim Keenan, because he's not about like using the buzzwords or the hashtags. He does a great job of engaging, and he's just a good guy. And I was lucky enough, he was in Washington, D.C. area recently, and I went out and had dinner with him. And I can tell you, a good business dinner is when I have to take out my phone and open Evernote and start taking notes, because he was truly sharing insights and his experience and how he works and how he prioritized. And so, those are the two guys that would jump out to me without question, is Coca Sexton and Jim Keenan.
Okay. So we've had the A-level results here in the UK just announced. This is this is quite a big thing for a lot of guys leaving college. Sometimes with great results, sometimes with not the best results or the results that they'd hoped for. Regardless of this, however, a lot of these people hit the ground with no connections on LinkedIn. Only a bit of domestic use on their Facebook. They've come across Twitter. They've used it a little bit. So these guys are zero. They're literally zero, and they've got to start talking to companies and trying to get the message across about why they should employ them, all this kind of stuff. What would you say is the most important thing that they should know before they start on the whole LinkedIn, the whole Twitter, what would you say is the one or two most important things they need to know about first?
I think you have to listen more than you post. You have to listen, and it's hard. And and that's coming from someone that has a line that says, "I talk fast and tweet faster," right? But I truly believe listening is the most powerful element of social. There is nothing more powerful than social listening, and that's using tools or not using tools. Scanning. I can tell you, I did a lot of business intelligence on companies that were competitors of the last enterprise company I worked with by just watching what their employees did. All of a sudden, 4 employees joined the same LinkedIn group, and that LinkedIn group was with one of our competitors. Well, for me, that's a sign. I'm putting those dots together that says, I wonder if they're going to select our competitor more than us. And then all of a sudden, I see, all of those things. There's so many digital data and so much information out there that social listening, you don't have to be posting everywhere all the time to get amazing value out of social media. So that's something I think people get overwhelmed with at first. They say, oh my God, I need to post 4 times a day to LinkedIn. That's how I'm going to grow my network. You can actually only post a little bit, engage in the comments, and use social listening, and probably find more value than jumping on and being a social rock star out of the gate. So that's one of the tips that I often recognize is, 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's the same thing online. Listen, see what other people are doing. You don't always have to post. And this is something I always talk about a lot. And I call it content. Content curation is really powerful. If you read a great blog post, rather than writing your own blog, share that blog post and then put your own insights in the commenting section, right? And because people want to hear from you, they don't sign up and to follow you on social media to get an RSS feed or just get a dump of all the things that are already out there on the internet. they want to hear from you. So, I think that's kind of something that's really important is listening. Listening is super important, especially on LinkedIn. I can tell you, I can go into groups and I can just comment or read other people's comments, and I can gain so much value in just listening. And then the other piece is respect your viewers' timeline and respect your audience's knowledge. Don't just share every blog post without reading them. I can't stand when people auto share stuff and then they don't read the blog post, because guess what? You look pretty stupid when someone challenges you, or you meet someone offline and says, Brian, that blog post that you shared was amazing. Bam, 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 bam. And you go, oh, I didn't really read that. I just shared it out to my social channels. Why would you share something that you didn't find? I respect a lot of people that, they don't share very often, but when they do share, it's of amazing value. And, and I talk about that when we talk about influence. With great influence comes great power. But if you use that power for the wrong things, and all of a sudden you don't become an authentic, trusted resource, that power and trust goes away, and so does your influence. And I think that's something that people really have to respect. So for me, I don't share anything that I haven't read. And that might surprise people because I spend a lot of time curating content. But why would I share it if I haven't read it? Like, why would I recommend to my followers to read something without reading it first? And I think that's something that people kind of get overwhelmed with. And I would rather you share one post with some great insights on what you think about it than sharing 4 posts that you didn't.
So one of the things that I'm seeing come through here on the side as we're talking, Brian, is we've got some questions, and we've also got questions. I've got some questions coming in through something that pops up on my Chrome, which is pretty cool as well. One of those is actually a really good question. Is it possible to be overexposed on social media platforms? Now, I've not actually planned to ask that question, but I like the question a lot. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, can a person be overexposed on social media platforms?
So I'm one that embraces FOMO, or fear of missing out. So I'm a little bit of everywhere and anywhere. But overexposed is a great question, because let's face it, social media can be a time suck. You can really get lost in social media and the engagement and the value. But at the end of the day, you have to, especially if you're using this for business, you have to have a strategy and you have to make money. And the number of followers, the number of hearts you get on Periscope, your clout score, last time, none of those pay the bills. So for me,
we just have a mention of clout there.
Yeah, we did have a mention of clout. We did. And I like to think of, we always use multiple variables to judge somebody, and clout is one of those variables that we can use. But for me, overexposure is possible. And someone sent me a message. I'm gonna give a shout out to Mia Connect. She said, Brian, I really hope that you can start to, embrace your JOMO. And I was like, what's JOMO? And she said, the joy of missing out. And so sometimes it's important to be hard to be found, or to be a little less connected. I'm not one that does that. I'm one that, I will say yes just about to, any interview and everything that I can do, because I love people. I love connecting. But that's kind of how I built my business and built my company around that. If you have a full-time job, and I do recommend being great in a few places rather than good everywhere. And I think people can really get lost. And I want to be great on Tumblr. I want to be great on all of these platforms. And if your audience isn't there, why are you there? And I think that's something that people can get overwhelmed on. So it's a great question. And for me, I sometimes struggle with that. And I'm learning to say no more often, because the wise words that, when I say yes, I'm saying no to myself, or saying no to other things that I want to do. So, but yeah, it's a great question. I think it is something you have to kind of calculate.
Okay, that's great. So I've got a couple of other questions for you. How much more time do you have?
We're good. Let's plug along. I'm here for you.
Okay. So I just want to get back over. You mentioned clout there, and I think we've been talking now for about 15 minutes, and it's the first time that clout's been mentioned, which is quite interesting. When we're talking about social measurement, all of a sudden clout comes up. If I go to the blog that you posted today on LinkedIn, you're using Pulse, and I saw that you'd written on there, or that you'd put something out there, how to turn a handshake into a hug, social business chat via IBM CIA. You talked about how brands need to recruit social employees to amplify their story, or to amplify the story of the business. I love the word amplify. How can companies see if a person is truly social or not? You're an MD, you're in a business, a small business, every dollar counts. You've got to bring somebody on. You're looking to bring a marketing person on, or maybe even a purchasing officer. How do you know? What tools can you use? What tools are out there to see if this person is truly social, whether or not they're going to help you amplify or not?
So your digital footprint is your resume today. And I firmly believe that. And for me, it's about looking at multiple variables, not just one. And I think that's important in everything you're doing, right? You're not gonna take, when you read a restaurant review, reading just one review is usually not the case. You usually read more than one review. The reason they ask you for 3 contacts when you're applying for a job is they want to ask 3 people, not just one. So when something like Clout Score to me is one variable, and it's one variable that you can use that does a good job of understanding someone's engagement. But because someone has a Clout Score doesn't mean they're great at social, and because they have a low Clout Score doesn't mean they suck at social. For me, it's one variable. So I love looking. For me, I would use a keyword that matters for that position and put their Twitter handle or put their name in there. See if they associate there. I think measuring multiple things and also understanding what it means to be good at social for you. Is it storytelling? Is it engagement? Is it sharing great content? Is it having a great blog? I can tell you, I am not a great blogger. I type and write like I talk. So I'm slightly sporadic and slightly all over the place. If you understood, I probably type really fast as well, just because it goes with my personality. But what I work really hard on is I really work hard on providing value. And providing value comes in so many different ways. I think people use that buzz too easily. And so for me, if I'm looking at somebody, and I have companies that come to me and say, Brian, I want to hire you to help me build out my employee advocacy, and I want to hire and fire for culture fit, because that's something that I kind of preach. And so for me, I oftentimes will look in their website. I look on what I want to find where they're commenting, because oftentimes we work really hard on delivering what we're going to have in our blog. But if you're a comment and you comment in blogs, if you provide value in the comment section, I think that's a great social person, right? Because they're not just worried about me. They're adding value on someone else's content. And I think that is just as important as the other ones. So my advice is don't just use one variable, and use the tools that are around there, and don't be afraid to ask the community for help. I can tell you a couple brands I've known that just reached out and said, on social media, I'm looking for someone that's great at this. Who would you recommend? You would be amazed when all of a sudden the same name starts coming up, right? And that's that's validation from their peers, but people aren't afraid to share on social media. So why not use that for your advantage? Crowdsource things like, hey, what are the 3 skill sets that I should have for my job in this industry? Because I do believe every industry is unique as well. So use multiple variables and don't be afraid to crowdsource.
Okay, that's great. I love that. I love the crowdsourcing point there on recruitment. When it comes to the person's resume, I love that. So just to dig into that a little bit deeper from the employer's side then, is it okay for an employer, in your opinion, is it okay for an employer to ask a candidate for a link to his or her profile on Facebook? Yeah, that probably is. Okay, but you can answer that in your own words. Although, just stepping a little bit further than that, is it okay for the employer to ask them to be friends with them on Facebook so that they can see that level deeper, i.e. what not just they're making available to the public, but what they're saying about how they really behave to their friends? Or do you think that there are boundaries that need to be respected?
Great question. So I worked in cybersecurity for 9 years for the Department of Defense here in the U.S. So I worked in the security space and the government space. And so privacy is very important to me, but at the same time, I believe in full transparency. But I'm going to caveat that with something. I don't believe every employee has to be a social employee. And that might surprise you, because I believe every employee has a role in the story of the brand and the social story. But I don't believe they all have to be a social employee. And what I mean by that is, if someone's not on social media or only uses social media to engage their friends, maybe they're not the public social employee you need. but maybe they can tell the story to your content team or to your manager who is very social. So every person in the company plays a role in the storytelling on social, but I don't believe every employee must be on social to be of value to your brand. So when you ask the question about personal Facebook, I don't think you have to, the employees should be asking them to friend them, to give them, you know, the exclusive access into their side, because you don't ask an employee, can I see your phone book and all of your text messages? Can I go to your house and read all of your mail? And you know, that to me is no different than asking someone. Now, I do love that you build a relationship where the employee wants to friend their boss and wants to friend, you know, and something that I embraced in my company early on, I had 32 direct reports. Every one of my employees worked from home. Not one person worked near me, and even in driving distance. And there's an app called Foursquare where you check in where, you know, your locations. And I gave access to my Foursquare to every one of my employees. And I said, here's the thing. I don't want you to sit in front of your computer at home all day. I don't believe just because you're not in your house means you're not working. And I know that we all work different hours, part of the advantage of that. But I wanted to embrace trust and transparency. So I would check in, hey, I'm at a baseball game on a Monday afternoon. I would check in, I'm at the golf course doing work. Because for me, it's that trust. It's that element where I want my employees to know that it's okay. And I can't preach to them and say, hey, I saw that you're here, here, and here, if I wasn't willing to give them exposure to mine as well. So I challenge a business. If you're asking your employee to do that, is it okay with your employee seeing all of your dirty laundry or all of your things on your private network? And most of them are going to say no. Yes, then I think that's an interesting culture as well.
It is. I guess the right to be forgotten with Google is probably quite a relevant topic there as well for businesses. Okay, so I guess I had a couple of other questions, but they were around clout and other solutions. I know that there's Cred. Do you know of anything else out there that can help people?
You know, I think there's a lot of influencer scores and a lot of influencer tools out there right now. I think we're still trying to define it. The problem is, you know, I worked in cybersecurity. There was a lot of certifications you could get. There's a lot of things. In social media, we really don't have that. It is kind of the wild, wild west, which is good and bad. I think it's partially bad because there was people that were early adopters that really provided no value and didn't help people, but they made themselves a guru or an expert because they said so, and nobody was there to challenge them. So for me, I still think we're a little early on how do we measure success. But the nice part about social and digital is all of it's there for us to see. You know, I can love when someone tells me, Brian, I'm no longer using Twitter. I hired this quote unquote guru, and they helped me, and it didn't work for me. And I reply back and say, did you look at that guru's page? Did you look at the Twitter account that they run themselves? They've never engaged once out of the account. They only post links. Why would you have thought that was any different for you and your brand? And I think that's the element where I kind of get in here is we're a little early, but I think measuring multiple variables, and there isn't one measurement out there, I think, yet to really measure true value. Even clout, and I can tell you, I have a extremely high clout score, and I oftentimes defend my clout score more than get credit for it, because there are some people that have gamified it, and I'm fairly new on the scene. I've only probably been doing public social media for not using social business, but social media for 3 years, and the fact that I'm at the 0.1% of all people on social media, oftentimes people are like, well, what did you do to gamify that? What did you do to work that system? And I haven't. I worked really hard at engagement, but I like that they're questioning that, because then I want them to go do research. Go see my website. Follow me on Twitter. I promise you I'll engage and I'll prove you right. And I think great people doing great things don't need to rely on one measurement. They're going to rely on their entire digital footprint to tell their whole story and prove that they have value, not just one number.
I love that. I love that. In fact, it rings very true to some stuff that I hear from a few people. Over here in the UK, we've got some great guys involved in this. And recently I've been lucky to be part of a group that I met Lisa, who is London_lady, taught me huge amounts about all of this kind of stuff. And I saw her go on to Periscope, do lots on Periscope, really authentic stuff, really enjoyed that. There's also Nat, who is Nat Schuler.
I've known Nat, and Thomas Powers, and that whole group over there. I tell you what, the UK is doing. Originally I felt like they were a little bit behind the curve, but I think they're doing social right. They're learning, just like Australia. Oops, I'm going to look feedback.
You're all good. I can still see you.
All right. But Australia and the UK, I think, are doing it right. They're learning from the mistakes that are happening in the US and kind of doing it right. And I'm excited to see that. Yes, Wade and Thomas, there's some really good ones out there.
Yeah, I got that feeling. I really did. I mean, I used to live in America for a few years, and I actually found that we were, I wouldn't say maybe neck and neck, but I would say that there's some real learnings going on over here as well. And Beju Solanki, I was going to mention as well, put a fabulous infographic, or whatever you want to call it. He put a great chart together recently that showed engagement over 12 months. It wasn't, at the beginning of the interview or the beginning of our chat, you were talking about don't come out of the gates trying to make an impression straight off the bat. This was a whole 12-month plan, which I really enjoyed reading. Okay, so just to round this off here, I want to say thank you very much for this, Brian. This has been my second blab. My first one was a complete disaster with Nat. Nobody could hear me and I couldn't hear him. So this one has actually worked. I think it's awesome. So thank you so much for that. We've got I've got my third on Wednesday, which is with Timothy Hughes. I don't know if you've heard of Tim.
Love Tim. Tim, you were asking me who does social selling right. Tim is one of them. Tim, he's a must follow on Twitter. He engages and always provides great feedback on LinkedIn as well. So I'm excited. I actually already subscribed to that blab because I saw that you were interviewing Tim, because I think I learned from him every single time. So he's a great one. So I look forward to that.
Well, I suspect he'll be. I suspect that will be a fun interview. He's also coming along to talk at the dinner on the 27th of August here in London. That is all about social selling. As you know, we do the dinners, and we've got one in New York, and hopefully you'll be attending that one. I think it's on the 24th. But you're not in New York anymore, though. I think you've moved now. Are you in your new house?
Yeah, I'm in my new house in Virginia.
So, yeah. Okay. Cool. So maybe I won't see you there. I don't know.
We'll see. I'm trying to make it work.
Well, we're certainly going to try and stream the IoT dinner over to you this month, I believe, aren't we? Yes. On the 24th, 25th of August. We're going to try and stream that in 360. We're using Skype for that. We're also going to be trying to cook some food with a 3D printer. And we've got a Michelin star chef coming in to help us do that. So I think that'll be quite a crazy night.
Love it.
Yeah. So with that, I want to say thanks very much, Brian. I've learned a lot there and look forward to hooking up with you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.